I am live. What's up, everybody? We were gonna do this live on Facebook, but we are going to attempt to do it on Instagram. So if just hang tight with us for just a second, we're making sure that we can get everybody on. Let me see how to invite people. Trojan. Boom. Okay. Oops. Just inviting Trojan on to come on with us. Okay. Hi, Dean. Hello, how are you? So we're going to talk about Delta 9 today with Trojan Horse Cannabis. If we can get him to be able to hop on, seems like we're a little shadow banned over there on Facebook. So we're going to hop on this platform. Boom. View. Yes. Go live with Trojan. Yes. Please work better than Facebook, my dear. Oh. It's going to shadow ban us again, really? It's still shadow banning us. Go live with Trojan Horse. Okay. I said yes. I don't know what you got to do on your end. Hang tight with us through our technical difficulties, guys. We can get this going. We're going to talk about Delta 9 and what that is and how it's legal over the counter here in Utah. These platforms are like, it says unable to join. Let's try you again. Invite requested. Okay, I invited you again. Oh,
Hey,
hello.
finally worked.
Heck yeah. Okay, let me, just while people are hopping on, nobody go anywhere. Let me tell everybody over on FaceCrook that we are over here on Instagram talking so that people know to hop on. Give me just 1 second. Live with Trojan Horse Cannabis. Okay. Achieve. United. Hopefully we get a little bit of interaction over on this platform. If not, okay, let me share it out to a couple of places real quick. Group. Okay. Just hang tight for me, and we will get this going. UPC. Facebook when I spam these live videos. I shouldn't call it spam because it's not really spamming, but it kind of feels like it sometimes. Okay, so we got the word out over on Facebook for people to come over and join us here. And then just hopefully we have some good questions from people. I know that my Instagram audience is at least like halfway different from my Facebook. So it's kind of nice because it really is two different platforms, two different followings.
Nice.
Yeah. One more second.
Man, if you ever want to be reminded of how old you are, just do a Facebook Live and stare at your own video for a minute. Good Lord.
Right? This one that's a Des. Let's see. It's oh, Shane's name. I need to unfollow Shane on Facebook because it just still wrecks me when I come across his stuff.
No.
I just get so upset that I can't talk his ear off about this darn expo because he like would just always listen to my ranting. I never used him as a punching bag, but man, he sure did have a really good set of listening ears, man.
He
Yeah.
was just a good dude all the way around. I can't believe I saw him like the day before and like randomly in Vegas, you know?
Right. But I kind of, the way that it helped me kind of deal with it was that, like, he was, like, on cloud nine. He was having the time of his life.
Yeah.
He literally was so happy there he died and went to heaven.
Mhm.
You know, that makes it easier, but I probably still need a good eye gusher. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's but hey Hemp Don, hey 420 B boys, what's up everybody? Okay, so let's get our conversation started. So we are here today with Chris. He is the owner and founder of Trojan Horse Cannabis. They make over the counter I guess what would you call it? I call it Delta 9 heavy products just to
Yeah,
kind of differentiate.
we're honestly trying to figure out what the best way to describe this is still. Sometimes we say Delta 9 heavy. Sometimes we say real THC. And the whole point is just to try to get the point across what it actually is. Because we hit these weird invisible walls where if we say Delta 9 heavy and someone doesn't know what Delta 9 is, they think it's like the next isomerized thing like D10 or THCP or THCO. And then sometimes if we say real THC, then we get the old Delta 8's real THC too. And I'm like, well, that's not what I meant. And so sometimes we say the OG THC. It just depends on the audience, and we're still learning how to say that. But yeah, a high dose, high potency Delta 9 hemp derived edibles.
Condense that down. No, just kidding.
Right.
I think when talking with you, Chris, and kind of talking about Trojan Horse, I think we need to go backwards like just a little bit and give people a good idea as far as who you are and where you come from, starting with the hemp exchange. Just trying to create a safe environment for farmers to be able to sell real product and being able to transport it and actually have product actually there and money actually there, just kind of creating that safe marketplace. And then we've got Project Hemp Flower, which is like the safest hemp flower you can buy online with your guys' safety practices. And then leading up to Trojan Horse. So I just kind of give them an idea as far as where you started in the Utah industry. I think it's really important to highlight the fact that everything you've been involved with has been incredibly safe. So let's start there.
Yeah, thanks. So my first introduction into the hemp industry proper was just before the 2018 Farm Bill was signed, and I was building the hemp exchange. And the reason we built the hemp exchange was because in coming into the industry, it was apparent right away that there was a lot of unscrupulous brokers around at the time, and farmers who had gone from soy one season or alfalfa one season to hemp the next season were used to, being trusting of purchasers and having a supply chain that functioned. If you're growing alfalfa, you kind of know where that's going when you're done. And the hemp industry was not that. So you had a bunch of farmers producing a bunch of high value crops and were naive to the industry. And I don't mean that in a negative way, like they were not intelligent, but it was just they hadn't been exposed to it. And there was a bunch of bad actors in the space that were taking advantage of that naivete and the high value crop. And farmers were literally putting all their biomass on a truck and sending it away and then never seeing it again and never getting paid. And this was all the way up and down the supply chain, from biomass all the way up to isolate for product manufacturers. One of the stories we dealt with at Hemp Exchange right off the bat was someone bought like 100 kilos of isolate and got 100 kilos of powdered sugar. And when they tried to send it back, the person that sold them the powdered sugar was like, no way, you swapped it out for powdered sugar. We sent you isolate. We're not giving you a refund. It was just a nightmare. So the whole point of the hemp exchange was to create a safe environment for vetted products. So we had a proprietary method to make sure the product was real, the person was licensed, we know who they are, we check their ID, etc. We'll list the product, and if someone wanted to buy it, we acted as the intermediary. They funded us. We scheduled a shipment. We took a sample of what was shipped ourselves, and then we sent it to the buyer. The buyer would have time to do their own testing, and if everything checked out, we'd flush the funds out to the seller. And if it didn't, then we were there to help handhold and unwind the deal and make sure it was done fairly. And so my heart for the industry from day one has been safety, accuracy, and in protection of the parties involved. And so we did hemp exchange for some time, and for a little bit we were the largest marketplace in the hemp space. And due to some differences of opinion, the operating team separated from that structure, that entity, and we, through the hemp exchange, further dove into the regulatory aspects. I got invited to Washington, D.C. to meet with the USDA in person, talk to them about the hemp program. I've spoken with several senators about their hemp programs and the federal the Farm Bill and et cetera. And we got to also learn what the consumer market was like. Like, we were heavy on the B2B side. But through it, we had a lot of new product manufacturers saying, hey, I'm buying isolate and full spectrum distillate from your platform. I'm making products with it. Where can I list those products, and how can I get it in front of customers? And so it sort of highlighted a couple key needs in the industry. And when we launched Project Hemp Flower, we were trying again to shore up some shortcomings of the consumer product market fit. And simultaneously, we were trying to offer a service to farmers that they didn't otherwise have maybe access to. So with our technical skill, our marketing skill, we launched Project Hemp Flower. We had a very aggressive vetting process. So all the flower that came in the door needed to pass a smoke test first to make sure it was cured well and cured like cannabis, not just left out in the field to turn into hay. And once it was cured and smoked really good, then I was like, all right, this smoke's is nice. It's got good bag appeal. It's trimmed really well. Let's send it off for full panel testing to make sure, one, it's underneath the Delta 9 limit, so it's legal, and two, it's safe. It passes residual solvents, it passes chemicals, mycotoxins, heavy metals, microbials, etc., to know that the customer is getting a nice, clean product. So when people bought from Project Hemp Flower, they were buying flower they know has been personally smoked and tested for quality, as well as sent to a lab for quality. And all those lab tests were transparently available to the customer. Additionally, we told them who the farm was. We wanted to try to build farm loyalty so farmers could start building an audience for their own products. Instead of us buying it saying this is the Project Hemp flower, we'd say this is an infinite tree flower or a Great Basin hemp flower. And that way consumers could follow those farms that they really liked. Out of Project Hemp Flower, we wanted to get into the edible space. And my time at Hemp Exchange involved a lot of deep dives into the regulatory code as well as the legislative code. And from day one, before the Farm Bill was even signed into law, I recognized the ability to do what Trojan Horse is doing now. But we didn't want to push the envelope too far, too fast, and freak out the industry and freak out the regulators. And we wanted to have some maturation of the industry before I did something like what we're doing now. But I recognized the opportunity right away. Anyway, fast forward. We were potentially going to get into D8 when that came out, just because it was the hot topic. And actually everyone was like, do you sell D8 flower? I want flower with D8 on it. And I was like, well, let me look into it. There was some, especially at the time, there wasn't a lot of quality D8 producers out there. So a lot of the D8 that was being produced was not done very well. There's now some producers doing a really good job at D8, Black House Botanicals being one of those. But a lot of producers still aren't doing a good job of it. So you really have to know where you're buying your D8 from. But anyway, because of the complication in the industry and being able to at the time source quality, clean, well-tested Delta 8, we decided not to get into that space. And I was like, you know what? It's time. It's time to do that thing I wanted to do 3 years ago, and let's see if we can get it done. And so we started Trojan Horse Cannabis, and it's just a method to get all the benefits of full spectrum distillate at potencies that actually work and help significantly in an ingestible that's federally compliant with the Farm Bill and can be shipped to all 50 states.
So, and that was amazing. Thank you for the rundown, because it really is important for people to understand that you've been involved in just safety and efficacy ever since the day you started. So I appreciate that. When it comes to CBD gummies, though, those have been out before Trojan Horse. So do you know if it was just the companies didn't want to dabble in the fact that they really could load it with more THC, or maybe do you think that they just didn't, were they reading it wrong? Is that why nobody has come out with the heavier type gummy until you did?
Yeah, I think there's this weird mental block that I hit when I'm talking to people about my product. Even product manufacturers who are currently making full spectrum CBD gummies I'll say something like, we have a Delta 9 gummy. It's a high Delta 9. It's 10 milligrams of Delta 9. And they'll say, well, you can't do that. I'm like, why not? Well, it's too much THC. It has to be below 0.3%. And I go, it is below 0.3%. And they go, well, that's impossible. I'm like, it's really not. Let's just do the math. So I break the math out for them, and they go, oh my God, why has no one ever thought of this before? And it really is. No one's thought of it because no one's thought of it. And it was just this mental block that you just can't do it, but you can. And in fact, it's such a common problem that during especially part of the market research, the product market fit research phase of getting the product to launch, I'd go up to, in conferences, I'd go up to other full spectrum manufacturers and say, oh, cool, this is a 50 milligram CBD edible. How much Delta 9's in there? And they go, oh, it's non-detect because it's trace amounts. I'm like, well, if it's non-detect, then you must be using broad spec or isolate. They're like, no, it's full spectrum. Okay, then you have Delta 9 in it. They're like, well, no, we don't. Let me see a COA. So they'd break out their COAs, and we'd look over the product, and I'd be like, look, you've got 3 milligrams of Delta 9 in here. And they're like, oh, my God, I've been telling people they won't fail a drug test by taking this. And they literally didn't understand that trace amounts of 0.3% could add up, and it does add up. And that there's enough milligrams to feel, and there's enough milligrams to make you fail a drug test, even in most regular full spectrum products. A lot of people don't realize that a full spectrum tincture, if you buy just a 30 milliliter, let's say 1,500 milligram tincture, you probably have 50 milligrams of Delta 9 in that tincture. So this is already being done and has been done. We're formalizing the process. Most people formulate to the CBD milligram, sort of ignore the THC. They don't want to talk about it. They don't label the milligrams. They just say it's under 0.3, and they leave it at that. We're more intentional. Okay, well, what is the milligrams? We're shooting for 10. We want a good ratio of 10 to 1. We feel that's a sweet spot. And let's call it what it is. There's 10 milligrams of THC in here.
Yeah, and so I was going to ask you to explain to people, because I noticed a lot have hopped on that I don't know have anything to do with like the cannabis industry or following. So explain what Delta 9 is. What is that we're talking about right now?
So Delta 9 THC is the THC. If you've ever heard the terms THC before in your life, it was probably in reference to Delta 9, even if the person saying it didn't recognize that. So it was the THC in marijuana since marijuana was a thing. It's been in cannabis since the dawn of time, since the dawn of human history's interaction with cannabis. And it's been the primary active ingredient all the way up until recent history. It is the same THC that you get at a dispensary in Oregon or Colorado, or a medical dispensary in Utah. It is the same THC that everyone's always used forever. The reason we say Delta 9 to specify is because Delta 8 THC, which does exist in a plant in trace amounts, right now is being sold in the hemp space, and it is not the same compound as Delta 9. It's just a different compound. So in the hemp space, when I tell people we sell a THC product, they assume Delta 8. So we have to clarify, no, this is Delta 9 THC, just to make sure we are talking apples to apples. But outside of the hemp space, we just say, oh, it's got 10 milligrams of THC, and most people know what I'm talking about.
Yes. That's awesome. And so just like the short of it, you basically make gummies that are of the same quality as the pharmacy/dispensary here in Utah. And so I think that there needs to be a bigger push to make people aware that these gummies are available without a med card. So these are over-the-counter gummies that you can get at your local vape shop, CBD shop, some health food stores. I'm not sure who your store customers are anymore, but I think it's really important that people know that they have access to this type of medicine without a med card, because med cards are super expensive in Utah, overly expensive in my opinion. And I've helped thousands of people with med cards, but I would say hundreds of them got the med card just because they liked gummies. And so this is a really great alternative to having your med card if all you want is gummies and even a THC tincture. I know they just outlawed the D8 vape cards, but not D8 gummies, right? So different kind of THC.
As far as I know, there's no blanket ban on D8 vape cards countrywide. I'm not sure if anything's changed in Utah on that recently, but I do know that the FDA is very concerned about Delta 8 because, as I said before, there's fewer people in the industry doing it properly. And so when the FDA and the CDC are getting calls on the regular for people getting sick from Delta 8 products, unfortunately, it's those couple of bad actors in the space that are making people sick and causing a big stink. And so the FDA is pretty frustrated about it. I don't think they've banned the carts yet. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know what's going on in Utah specifically with carts. We can't be in the cart space with our concept because 0.3% works great on an ingestible. It does not work great in a cart. Because even a 1 gram cart would only have like 3 milligrams of THC, which is not much when most carts, even a 1-to-1 cart's going to have 500 milligrams or close to it of THC. So it doesn't quite work in the vape concept, but it works great for tinctures and gummies and things of that nature.
Nice. Do you want to touch on the safety of your gummies real quick? Just what's the process? I know they're made off-site for right now, but can you just tell people kind of the basics of how the oil is extracted from the plant and then how it's added to the gummy, and then any additional safety testing that you have when you receive your gummies?
Yeah, absolutely. So the oil we use is the same type of full spectrum distillate that any other full spectrum product uses. If you've ever bought a full spectrum tincture or gummy or vape cart or anything else, that's the same oil basically that we're using for our gummies. There's two key differences. One, not a lot of people are full panel testing their input oils these days. We do that, so the oil's got to be clean going in. Two, we don't isomerize, we don't synthesize, we don't mess with the chemistry, but we do separate the THC from the CBD. And then we pull a little CBD off the top so the ratio is not so aggressive. And then we put the CBD back in. That way we can end up with a 10-to-1 ratio of THC to CBD, because typically, or CBD to THC, typically because hemp plants usually make 25 to 30-to-1 as their standard ratio. And that's a lot of CBD to take in. And often what happens is when you add 10 milligrams THC to 300 milligrams CBD, it kind of knocks you out. You go to sleep most of the time. So that's actually a great product for someone that's looking for high CBD usage. And we're actually considering bringing a 30-to-1 ratio back into our SKUs and our catalog. But our flagship is a 10-to-1 product. It's phyto-created cannabinoids. And we full panel test the input materials. We batch test every batch we make. And we get full panels on that to make sure that it's compliant and safe. Occasionally something will happen that is suspect. And luckily so far, every time we've had a suspect, it's been in the sampling. Someone that grabbed the gummies for sampling forgot to let the jar dry out of the cleaning solution or the sanitization process, and they threw gummies in, and so it popped for whatever we use to sanitize with. And so we've had some issues where we've, all right, let's put everything on hold. Let's make sure this product doesn't go out the door until we figure out what happened. And we figure out what happens. We don't just let it go. So we're very, very cautious about safety protocols. So every jar that goes out the door has to meet a certain standard. And that standard is both a legal standard. It's a safety standard, but it's also an ethical standard. All of our jars and all of our products that we create will always come with child-resistant packaging, because I don't think it's responsible to let your 5-year-old accidentally eat 4 or 5 gummies when it's got 10 milligrams of THC in it.
Right.
So we're very cautious with that. We even make our retailers sign an agreement saying they will only sell to 21 plus, even though there's no law that says that. Technically, we could sell this to 18-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 10-year-olds. We wouldn't do that. And we contractually require that our distribution points don't do that. But yeah, so we're big on safety. We're big on ethics here, and we make sure that we produce a clean product that's phyto-generated.
Heck yeah. And so with the emergence of these types of products, because you were first, but now you're not the only one being sold in Utah, how important is it for people to read labels when they think they're
Super important. Super important. I have 2 comments here. The first one is what consumers should do. But before I do that, the second comment is it's unfair to ask consumers to do this. So let me clarify. Consumers should be reading the label. They should be getting a full panel COA. That full panel COA should match the batch or the SKU of the specific item in your hand before you ingest it.
Where do they find that?
So it depends. It should, a good producer will have a QR code right on the jar with either a SKU or batch number tied to it. At minimum, it should be on their website. And if you can't find it on their website, and if it's not, there's no QR code on the jar, then you should be asking the retailer or the manufacturer via email, hey, I just bought this. Can you send me the full panel COAs? At minimum, if there's no full panel COAs, you should not be ingesting that. Because if a company doesn't want to spend the money to test their product before it goes into a human body, then I wouldn't want to put it in a human body. And that's just my opinion. But then secondly, this is where things get really complicated. It is really popular right now with our competitors to synthesize or isomerize their Delta-9 instead of using naturally extracted Delta-9. So you can use not exactly the same, but a similar SOP that you convert CBD isolate into Delta-8. You can convert CBD isolate into Delta-9. And it is for someone that knows what they're doing and already has a process and the lab and the equipment, it's more inexpensive to convert to Delta-9 than to using naturally extracted Delta-9. And because it's more inexpensive, they can create a cheaper product and they can get it out to market quicker. So most of our competitors right now are synthesizing their products. And the way you can tell, and this is really going to get in the weeds, but the way you can tell is if there's no minor cannabinoids other than Delta-9 THC, it's probably synthetic, because it's really, really hard to get no minors in your full spectrum distillate.
And you're talking CBD, CBG, CBN, any CBD alphabet, basically. It's got to have more in there than just have THC listed. Okay.
Yes, that's the first thing. Sometimes people will take a synthetic D9 and then they'll add CBD isolate, so you'll get both THC and CBD, but there won't be any CBC or CBG or THCV or CBN or anything else in there. And so if you're not seeing minors, it's probably synthetic. If you're just seeing a primary or two primaries, if you will, primary and a secondary with no minors, it's probably synthetic. This is really in the weeds, but if you can get your hands on the chromatogram, which is the report that is shown on the COA. It is the spectral analysis, if you will, of what they found. You'll see a bunch of little unknown isomer peaks that aren't labeled. If you see unknown isomer peaks, that means that the product was most likely synthetic or isomerized from something else. It was catalyzed from CBD. And those unknown isomers are exactly that. We don't know what they are. And you're putting things in your body that we don't know what they are or what they might do to you. So if this applies to D8 too. If you're getting a D8 product, look for those unknown isomers if you can get access to that chromatogram, because they shouldn't be there anymore. That should all be remediated out. So those are things to look out for. And so now to finish my second part of that, it's really unfair to expect a consumer to do this.
Right.
I think it's very unreasonable to say, hey, you're a consumer looking for whatever it is you're looking for. Why don't you call the manufacturer and ask to analyze their chromatogram to figure out if this is isomerized or not? Like, that's a ridiculous statement. And I don't think it's fair to put consumers through the ringer this way. But the reality is there's no other way to guarantee your product is safe unless you know how to do these things.
And so for the synthesized THC, is that not as good because it can make you sick, or is it just because there's really no like synergistic medicinal effect? Why is a synthetic
I hesitate to throw shade, if you will, at things that aren't fully understood yet. So I don't want to say that synthetic Delta-9 or isomerized Delta-9 bad. Because we don't know. That's more my concern, is that we don't know. Okay. Is it the same when we isomerize Delta-9 from CBD isolate? Is it the same isomer, or is it like a chiral pair, or is it a mirrored version? Is it a version of Delta-9 but not the same one the plant makes? If so, that could be a problem. I'm not saying it is, but we don't know. I'm more concerned, though, about the practices of leaving behind the unknown isomers that are created in the process and the potential reagents that they were using to make the product maybe being left behind. And again, if you find a good lab that's doing a good job of this or a good manufacturer, those things won't exist. But the problem is, how are you going to know as a consumer without doing the homework? So that's my biggest concern, is unknown isomers, unknown residuals laying around the product and making it to the end consumer, because a lot of people are just racing to get in. I mean, I don't want to throw names around because that's not the type of marketing or person that's in the marketing I do. That's not the person I am. But one of our big competitors, they market 15 milligrams of Delta 9 THC with nothing else in it. Their COA says 10 milligrams. They have no full panels. And they, out of like the 20 flavors they offer, there's only one COA for one flavor. And so that's like a giant red flag to me, right? Like, your COA doesn't match your dosage, which means it's not the same product, or you're lying about dosage. Either way, that's bad. And two, there's no minors in here, which means that you created this. And based on those things alone, I don't trust that you took the time or spent the money to remediate your product properly. And so those are the things that scare me. It's not so much that the synthetic version or the isomerized version of Delta 9 is inherently bad. Same with Delta 8, it's not inherently bad. It's the things around it in the current version of the industry that are more concerning to me.
That's a really good explanation. I'm happy that you said that, because that kind of put it into perspective for me as well. So I'm glad we're doing this. This is exactly why we're doing this, because it needs to be talked about more, especially the research that's going on. People need to know, and people really do need to understand that cannabis products are going to take a little bit of homework. If you need them to work effectively for something going on in your body, maybe not so much if you just want to get that head change and you don't really care where it comes from. I mean, you can basically just take any product, just make sure everything's in moderation, because you never know what is going to hurt you, if anything, over a long period of time. But for those of us, and for those people that are looking for real relief, cannabinoids and terpenes and all the things that are in this plant, they all matter. So this is going to be the first product that people really are going to have to kind of dive in and make sure that what they're taking is effective but also safe, because, and I don't know the scientific terms, so maybe you can speak to the scientific terms, but I just know that, and I know that a lot of people still need to understand this, that cannabis is a plant that literally sucks every single toxin out of the ground, and it cleans the soil. And so you want to make sure, and this is why all this testing is necessary, you want to make sure that your products are safe and that they're not going to have those heavy metals and the pesticides like Agent Orange, is still lurking in all of the country. And so the last thing you want to ingest is those things. And so just kind of breaking it down and letting people know that cannabis products are no joke. Like, you really have to do a little bit of research, maybe not as far down as the whatchamacallit, the chromanogram. Yeah. 5 times fast. But at least like looking for that QR code. And if a product does not have a QR code on it in Utah, it also means that it's not registered with the state, and it hasn't been proven that it's free of these pesticides, heavy metal like lead, those kinds of things. So that, just to make it easy for people, just if it doesn't have a QR code, just don't mess with it. There's plenty of other products out there that are safe and effective and are registered by the state to be at least safe and a clean product.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't always support the Utah Department of Agriculture's decisions in this industry. In fact, I often am at odds with them. And I didn't love the CBD registration list concept when I first knew that this was something we would have to comply to. But once I wrapped my head around it and really understood the intent, I'm actually very supportive of this. And the reason is because the federal government's left everyone hang out to dry. The reason consumers need to do this is because it's an unregulated market. And really on both sides of the plant, the marijuana side and the hemp side of the plant, because the marijuana side left up to the state to figure out, and the state may have too strict of rules, it may have not strict enough rules. And there's already standards that we have as in society for acceptable food grade standards and dietary supplement standards and drug and over-the-counter standards. And to not allow or force companies to follow those safety standards while the industry continues to make products anyway, puts the consumer in a position where all of a sudden The burden of safety's never been on the consumer. You don't have to go buy a pack of Oreos and then send it off for full panels to make sure it's safe to eat. Like,
Right.
this doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet other than in the cannabis space. And it's because of lack of regulations from the federal government and inaction on their part. So because of that, the industry's gone wild. It makes room for bad actors as well as good actors. Bad actors perform better because they're willing to cut corners to make a profit, so their dollars make them more successful. They can get better reach. They get in the hands of more people. The good actors are left, paying the expensive bills for the panel testing and not making bad medical claims and, doing things the right way. And therefore, it's actually harder for us to get the audience that the bad actors have. So it's a really rough industry to participate in to some extent. But you're right that because of the lack of regulatory oversight, it is upon the consumer, unfortunately, to understand at least the minimums. Look for full panels, make sure it's a clean product, look for reviews of the company.